Hi everybody, what's brewing? I'm Mike Biana and this is Coffee Talk. Joining us at the coffee table today is someone who has a lot of experience, and not just because he's been on our show before, but because he's been a police officer for over 25 years. I'm talking about none other than the Chief of Police for the City of Coral Gables, Edward J. Hudak. Chief Hudak, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. My pleasure.
Listen, so the last time you were here was under different circumstances. You were the interim Chief of Police.
Yeah.
You were sworn in as the permanent Chief of Police for the Coral Gables Police Department back in October. There were hundreds of people out at that event. You were very well liked in this community. Tell us about that moment. Take us back to when you were being sworn in.
The moment was really a big moment for the department, and I really wanted to focus on the department and the rest of the employees of the city. I mean, you know, we as public sector employees don't get a chance to show off what we do and actually get to feel what the public, in this case our residents of Coral Gables, feel about what we do every day, where a lot of us are unsung heroes. So probably my biggest takeaway from that day, as monumental it was for me personally, I thought it was bigger for all of the employees, the police department employees, and my family. You know, as you said, when you're interim and the last time we were here, there's a lot of things you really want to do. You kind of have to ease into it because there was no guarantees, and I appreciate the manager's confidence in me to continue. And you know, it's in this job you take nothing for granted, because no 2 days in a police officer's life or a communications operator's life is ever the same. So you kind of get used to that. A lot of that's uncomfortable for other people, but when you're in this business, you know, you never know what's going to hold, and that's probably what keeps me excited about coming to work every day for the last, you know, 25, 30 years.
Sure. Well, you know, that was for you what you want to have the vision for the police department moving forward. What are some of the things that you want to achieve by the end of the year and moving forward?
Well, I'm not a person that has just one specific goal and try and rest on it. So my onward goal from the day of the interim appointment through the day of the appointment, and I spoke about this at my installation, was that you know, our constant goal all the time is a zero crime rate. Now that's, like I've said previously, that's not reality. We do deal with the reality, but everything that we need to continue to do, you know, we've had success, and I think some of the successes we've had in 2014 and 15 have been the fact that I believe our community leaders, have a renewed confidence. Not that they ever had a disconfidence or not a great level of confidence. They had questions. I think the department as a whole, from the officers, answered that. Sure. I think the community presence, you know, from the day or two afterwards that I took over, was different. And I think as we go forward, you know, we have to continue to blend technology with what we do every day to continue to lower the crime rate. 2015 was a successful year for us. You know, our numbers, the preliminary numbers are in to FDLE and the FBI, and I think we're going to be very proud of what we've accomplished, not just as a police department, but in partnership with the community.
Now, speaking on something that you just touched on, obviously the goal is to try to make zero crime. And obviously it's not something that's realistic. However, it is something that you're working as close to possible to achieving. How do you go about that logistically?
We do a series of things that we've done throughout my tenure as the interim and now the chief. And as we continue to go forward, I mean, we have to constantly press ourselves as employees. We have to constantly bring in the rest of our employees, such as yourself and everybody working here today, you know, to see something, say something. More eyes gives us the better ability to respond to those things as police officers. Not take matters into your own hands, but let us know. So I think, you know, part of our moving forward to do that is to make this the absolute safest place in the community, in the world, in Dade County. And we don't want to go to the measures of having to change anybody's quality of life, but we want to enhance it. Sure. So we want everybody to be alert. Now that takes a lot of education for us. You know, vehicle burglaries are our biggest crime. Yeah. And 70% of those vehicles, on average, are left unlocked. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody to not lock your car doors. Just don't leave things inside.
Sure.
It'd be great if they did. So I think it's a constant outreach, you know, which was a big part of how we started with this program, as well as the shows we put out. You know, how do we not only get out on Facebook and internet,
right,
but how do we bring our residents who may not be that savvy to follow us, because we can get that broad message
sure.
out. As the social media changes, right, so must we. We can put that out, but we also want our residents to become in tune with us through
right,
social media and other
yes.
ways.
It's a good give and take between both the police departments, the fire departments, and of course the residents of the city. You mentioned you had a good year in 2014, 2015. There was certainly a renewed vigor once you took over as permanent chief of police. What are some of the strengths of the police department here that help you achieve the goal of trying to get as low crime as possible?
Listen, I work alongside some of the best people in law enforcement and public servants, and that's within the police department. But we are partnered with the fire department, the sanitation department, parks and recreations. You know, I wouldn't want to work for any other city. And that's not to be disparaging, again, to my sister cities, our sister cities. When you've grown up in here and you've become kind of a statesman, if you will, because of your tenure, you really get to know everybody. And the downside is to see a lot of those friends that I've known so long retire. But I have to tell you, in my role now in seeing new employees come on and swearing in new officers, you know, our charge as senior leaders in all the departments is to mold the individuals, to train the individuals. The city manager has a focus on how we are going to be excellent, be exquisite in what we do, and then train and mold our people. And I've seen a great response to that. Our biggest asset, in my opinion, is not the technology, is not the bells and whistles, so to speak, it's our employees. And that has been true within my department, and I think that has been contagious, if you will, to other departments. And I think by and large, you see us working together hand in hand.
Now, those are some of the strengths that all of us here, all the different departments have, is working together, not necessarily looking for weaknesses. What are some things that perhaps we as a city, you as a police department, can improve upon?
Well, listen, technology, and it's a weakness, but it's also, I would say, a disadvantage. Okay, I think technology is growing exponentially so quickly that, you know, we need to continue to invest, both as a city and as a department, into ever broadening our horizon of reach to everybody. But in the same token, like our city, you know, it is has to grow as well. I mean, we have an elderly population that needs attention, that we need to reach out to. It's a different way of policing in Coral Gables than it is any other city. You know, we are very much a service-oriented city. I believe that we need to continue, and we will be, a service-oriented people, how we interact with everybody. And at the flick of a switch or the snap of a finger, we also have to be the protectors. We have to be those centurions that we've talked about on several occasions. So I think the biggest challenge is educating not only the citizens, but training the newer officers as to what the cultural success story, if you will, you know, is about this city. And like I've always said, this isn't a job for us in the police department. It really is a calling. And you know, somebody asked me once, like, what is it about Coral Gables? And I will tell you, it's about its root structure. Mm-hmm. And Coral Gables is a city that roots actually grow up. Because this city, when you invest, when you become part of it, the root structure comes from the ground. As green as our canopy is, and grabs you and holds on to
Right.
you. And that's why people live here. That's why businesses move here. And that's why officers and employees want to stay here. I think that's it. It's root structure.
I think that's a really appropriate metaphor, considering we are considered a tree city USA. We touched briefly that you have quite the extensive experience. So we talked about
You're
your
calling me
philosophy.
old. That's a very nice way of saying I'm old.
Well, you've
Between
got
that
more-
and all these things, it
Well,
just
listen,
means I'm
you've
an
got
old
more
man.
experience than perhaps I've been on this earth, so it is quite a bit of experience.
That hurt.
I'm sorry. But listen, but it's a real testament to the longevity of work that you've put in. It's the whole body of work and how much you really care about this community, which is, to me, and I know to a lot of our viewers, just amazing. Now, to a lot of the viewers who are maybe tuning in for the first time and didn't watch our previous Coffee Talk interview, tell us about you and how you got to where you are today. Tell us about young Ed Hudak going through the ranks.
Young Ed Hudak, listen, I've always had a desire to serve in the role of a police officer. You know, and this goes from a very young age in Pennsylvania. Football and scholarships brought me to South Florida, brought me to Coral Gables at the University of Miami. And I started my law enforcement career at the University of Miami while I was working on my first master's. And then in 1988, I decided, I said, you know, this is just, again, I'll go back to the metaphor of the roots. It just grabbed me. I mean, I'm working alongside some of the best officers to ever walk this earth. You know, Vietnam veterans who came back and taught me more about discretion than they did the laws and how to do our job and how to find that balance. And then I wanted to be here. As a young officer, I loved working the midnights, and as I've told many people, I've never owned a house. My wife and I have never owned a house in Coral Gables. I went to school here in college, but I would submit to you that I'm a son of Coral Gables because I've grown up on the streets while everybody else is sleeping, which is a nice time to be on the streets if you're a cop. Not a good time if you're a bad guy because we're out there looking. And then just worked myself through the ranks, as you say, you know, as a detective, which I really just enjoyed that immensely. Worked narcotics, and a lot of that all had a nexus back to Coral Gables. In 2000, I decided that you know, the supervisory position maybe which way I want to go. Was involved in the union and still have a very good relationship with the union. You know, it's we will agree to disagree, but I think it's a very respectful because I do believe, you know, we have certain rules that we have to manage by, contracts being one of them. So it's good to have that relationship, and I'm not saying be pushed over. I've never been accused of being a pushover, except maybe by my daughters.
Yeah, well.
But, you know, that kind of worked its way through, and then I went into the promotional process, sergeant, lieutenant, was charged by the Chief Hammerschmidt to rewrite as well as oversee internal affairs. Which was a very eye-opening experience for me to be on that position and to see both the dark side and to investigate officers, which is never easy, and then move through the ranks of majors and ultimately appointed on September 11th of 2014.
And here we are today.
There we are. That's it. That's pretty much in a nutshell. But it's always been in the same place. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, that puts a nice little bow on it. But Chief, now we've talked about your history, your philosophy, what you want to see here happen in the city of Coral Gables. But if there's one thing, or even a couple of things that you want to say to the residents, what would it or they be?
What we need is our continued partnership. I pledge to the residents, to the city manager, to the commissioners, the transparent policing of its city. And as the leader of their centurions, I would say, of those officers, you know, we are here to protect them. We are here to prevent crime. We're here to solve crime. But we cannot do it without their input, without their participation. And together, in the truest sense of a community, you know, we want to make this everybody's hometown, whether they're visiting or not. We want that feeling. And because we have contact across all lines, visitors, residents, businesses alike, and criminals, I pledge to them that their department will always be proud, and we will always try in our best to make them proud. But in the spirit of transparency, if we make a mistake, and I anticipate making mistakes, it could be any day, we will be transparent, we will take responsibility and ownership for it, and we will always represent the residents, the citizens, the visitors of Coral Gables to the best of our abilities at every stretch.
Well, Chief, you're a very busy man. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so we just thank you for being here, and we hope you come back soon.
I will. My pleasure, Mike. See you again.
Once again, that was Chief Ed Hudak, the Chief of Police for the City of Coral Gables Police Department. That'll do it for this edition of Coffee Talk. If you want more of our content, visit our YouTube page at youtube.com/CoralGablesTV and visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/City of Coral Gables. I'm Mike Biana. Thanks for watching, and stay beautiful, Coral Gables.